Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching the Wire Wrap. I'm Sravasti Dasgupta. With the Supreme Court permitting green crackers, citizens in Delhi burst firecrackers of all kinds throughout the night on Diwali, which has led Delhi's air quality to plummet to levels that are the worst in 5 years. Meanwhile, in Bihar, ahead of the elections, the opposition Mahagathbandhan alliance has announced Tejashwi Yadav as the chief ministerial face and VIP chief Mukesh Sahani as the deputy chief minister's face, which has put the spotlight on the NDA not announcing Nitish Kumar formally as the chief ministerial candidate. And on the other hand, Francesca Orsini, scholar of Hindi literature and professor emerita at SOAS London University, was stopped from entering India despite having a valid visa. To discuss all this and more, I'm being joined by Ajoy Ashirwad. He's political affairs editor at The Wire, and Radhika Bordia. She's a senior journalist. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get started with Diwali, since that's just gone by, and just to tell our viewers that in Delhi this year, the Supreme Court had permitted the use of green crackers within a permissible time limit, but citizens went all out with the ban being lifted, and firecrackers of all kinds were burst, which led to pollution levels soaring. Now, Chief Minister Rekha Gupta has said, on the other hand, that the pollution levels have dipped despite firecrackers ban being lifted. But what's interesting is that many stations that record the air quality levels went blank on the night of Diwali at peak hours when air pollution was likely to be recorded the highest. So while experts have raised questions about the gaps in data due to these blackouts, the question first arises is that why were these monitoring agencies not providing real-time data, and should the government not answer this?
The government should answer this, but Sravasti, I'd like to point out that unlike previous, the Aam Aadmi government, which the pollution is not a new phenomenon during Diwali. That I agree. This is Rekha Gupta's statement also. But the crucial difference between the previous Aam Aadmi Party governments and the Rekha Gupta-led BJP government, I felt was that the Aam Aadmi Party, despite kind of not being able to contain pollution to the desired levels, but they wanted to be seen as trying to combat pollution every Diwali or before that, and trying to kind of take steps, and some of them which were missteps also, but the pollution remained one of their core focus areas, although they could not be successful on many counts. But here the attitude of the Rekha Gupta government was completely the opposite. I thought the pollution was sought to be buried as a concern before Diwali, and their ideological positioning of that Diwali, which every time Aam Aadmi Party or any civil society organization or the Congress pulls up concerns of pollution and toxic air we always heard the BJP leaders or the Sangh Parivar leaders talking about singling out Diwali or Hindu festivals to talk about pollution. And exactly Rekha Gupta was following the same template, I thought, where pollution, she was the first one, and her leaders her cabinet ministers were the first one to congratulate the Supreme Court for allowing crackers, which we know, of course, green crackers, but all of us who live in Delhi, we know that how in the garb of selling green crackers, there are so many normal crackers which were being sold in every nook and corner of the city. So there was absolutely no attempt to stall, or Supreme Court mandated that the crackers could be, burst for 2 hours only. But there was absolutely no monitoring of whether, and there was no curbs, there were no police checks. None of these things happened. It was very clear to any lay observer also that people were given a very free hand to celebrate Diwali according to how they wanted, and some of the Insta reels showed us that people went mad because they were allowed to burst crackers without caring for their own children who were breathing toxic air. So it's clear that this government, the Delhi government, is actually not bothered about, and the levels of smoke here, and you can sense it from the very lame statement also that Rekha Gupta spoke about after seeing these fumes after Diwali. She said that they had around 1,000 water spraying tankers and anti-smog guns. We couldn't find any of those things, and even then, there's such levels of when the AQI level reaches its maximum of 500 or 1,000 according to international standards. So there was absolutely you didn't see any kind of alarm ringing in the government circles.
But Radhika, I want to come to you about also what Ajoy is referring to is the politics, the political aspect of it, and how BJP has, of course, made it a part of its campaign to celebrate Hindu festivals. But a large part of allowing Diwali this year and to kind of justify the pollution, the bursting of firecrackers is that the stubble burning that takes place in neighboring areas, including Punjab and Haryana. But interestingly, this year there has been a decline of 77.5% in stubble burning incidents, according to research by Climate Trends. And this is driven by the fact that there was devastating floods in Punjab this year. Yet the Delhi government has sought to place the blame on Aam Aadmi Party ruled Punjab for stubble burning incidents. So, do you think government's ignoring the impact of firecrackers is its own failure, and also the fact that we never speak about the biggest pollutant in Delhi, which is vehicular pollution? Is that a deliberate attempt by these governments to just focus on these peripheral issues that keep coming every season?
I mean, of course, there's a sort of complete predictability to what's happening. I think that this whole blaming Punjab is a very convenient way of not looking at how pollution has risen in Delhi, what the number of motor vehicles going on the roads each year is about, and what it's doing. I think that it's also very interesting because in this case, as you say, the stubble burning in Punjab is showing a decrease in any case. But here's common sense. You can have pollution monitors blank out. You can have data which is not transparent or even fudged and I'm not saying in this case it was fudged. I mean, we just didn't have the data. But for anyone who's living in Delhi, the day before Diwali and the day after the firecrackers burst, you can feel it, you can see it, you can taste it. And unless the BJP government would believe that at night suddenly the farmers in Punjab woke up and started burning their fields massively and somehow miraculously pushed all the smog into Delhi, really we will have to look at what the reality is, which is that firecrackers and the bursting of firecrackers is particularly hazardous. It is hazardous to everybody. It is hazardous to BJP voters. And the bigger issue that since when has bursting of firecrackers become the central aspect of celebrating Diwali as a Hindu? And we have all been Hindus. Many of us have been Hindus, many of us have been practicing, many of us have not. But I don't know of practicing Hindus who used to hold the right to burst firecrackers as central to their faith. And especially not when it's literally choking their grandparents or their babies to death. So I think there is a predictability to this. I mean, we knew this was going to happen. What is really interesting is that the actual pollution monitoring levels went blank. I mean, that's still always an interesting thing to note.
That's very interesting because also experts have said that this is not the first time that this has happened, that monitoring agencies have gone blank. There have been gaps in data in the past as well. But for it to go blank for hours creates greater problems for analysis and how air quality can be measured and what can be done to prevent it happening again. But since the government has not provided any answers or even addressed the fact that these agencies went blank in crucial hours between 11 p.m. till 6 a.m. in the morning of Diwali, that raises further questions. But let's quickly move on to the...
That's also shows the priority, how this government, Delhi government, prioritized analyzing pollution data. Now it was the government spokespersons came out and said that the pollution levels were much lower than what was before on the day of Diwali, which was absolutely true because they did not have sufficient data to even kind of establish that fact which they were claiming. And this is what, like, there's what I would like to kind of also say, that there's absolutely lack of any kind of scientific attitude towards any form of environmental concerns. During the elections, BJP promised that they will clean up Yamuna. They had a lot of promises to make for how to contain pollution even during non-Diwali hours. What we have no, there were initial optics of they were trying to clean up Yamuna, but none of those things could happen. But we constantly have some form of news that okay, this government is beginning to plan a cruise on Yamuna, on that dirty Yamuna, even when all the filth from factories flow into that. So, and similarly, the air pollution checks, anti-smog guns, or water spraying, none of those things could have happened. There were no pollution checks. And rather, they are trying to bury this issue by talking about Sanatan, by being traditional. So, I am like really alarmed that how can a government not think about governance in its logical, rational way, and always bringing in Sanatan to defend themselves in face of failures or in face of criticism. That's the
And
main
certainly, I
thing.
mean, in terms of data, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. There has been, we really have very little access to scientific methodology for most things. And now to hear that pollution monitors weren't working is really sort of
On the day
adding
of
to it.
Diwali, when pollution
But
should be monitored.
except when it comes to pollution, you can, this is where you can't really hide the data because we're living, breathing, you can see the pollution.
That's a larger problem with data and this government, which perhaps requires another separate discussion. But let's also move on to Bihar, where elections are due in less than a fortnight right now. And just yesterday, the opposition Mahagathbandhan alliance has announced Tejashwi Yadav as the chief ministerial face and Mukesh Sahni of the VIP as the deputy chief ministerial face. Now, this announcement came yesterday after weeks of uncertainty in the India bloc itself about seat sharing arrangements, about disagreements between the Congress and the RJD, and not reaching the deal that either party would have liked to. Even now, the formal announcement of the number of seats that each party is contesting is not clear. That was not made clear in the press conference yesterday. Instead, they said very simply that friendly fights and 5 to 7% does not really make a difference. So focus on the 95% and not on the 5 to 10%. But the fact that the alliance has put up a joint front yesterday, do you think this has come too late?
It is certainly very late. Elections are, the first phase of voting is November 6th. That's barely a fortnight. And leading up to this announcement, there was even talk that the parties may end up going separately. There was even speculation that some in the Congress wanted to do so, some in the RJD wanted to do so. And while a lot of that is part of any sort of alliance coming together, the fact that it was pushed as late as this, it was alarming and it was worrying, and certainly it paralyzed a lot of your party workers. And so when this decision comes, yesterday, it's a welcome relief. And there is a sense among, I spoke to a few RJD and Congress workers, and they said that, at least what's left of campaigning time, we can try and concertedly, focusedly fight. The fact that a chief minister and a deputy chief minister position has been announced allowed Tejashwi and others to go on the offensive to demand of the NDA what they're doing about their chief minister. But yes, if you ask me, is it too late? I think we'll have to see how it pans out. But in terms of the lack of cohesion, given that you are already fighting a power that is not just ruling centrally, but in the state, the fact that you had a momentum that you'd built with the Vote Adhikar Yatra. There was some sense, some visibility, but then there is a disappearance of Rahul Gandhi. And in that, I'd say that if during the Vote Adhikar Yatra, if other faces had been projected, if at that time EBC leadership had been developed, then that absence would not have been as dramatic. But certainly, you have a momentum and then you have that almost sort of implode. So yes, late in the day, but still among the party workers a sense of now being galvanized. Look, there's an attempt to downplay the sort of pitting candidates from within the alliance against each other. But I think it's almost 10 seats. I think it was 12, but 2, I think they've negotiated it. But I think it's almost 10 seats. Look, there's nothing called a friendly fight. I mean, I'm someone has to explain to me what that term means. What there is also an attempt now to say that, actually this is strategic. In some cases, the two candidates will cut the vote and of the BJP, and then if that happens, that will be purely accidental, because I do not see any crafting, and nor have I heard of anyone actually giving me examples of that. So late, and I think this will be a definite disadvantage. But the fact that it's come is now allowing the India bloc to move forward, and we'll have to see how they actually then get their campaign rolling. I'll just say one more thing, which is that it's also particularly more problematic because you have to realize that elections are also about perception and narratives. And with a media that is never going to highlight the dissensions within the NDA, you have to work much harder. You know that this is your political stage. You know that the media, the mainstream media, is not with you, or will look for any chink in your armor. You've got to then make sure that your armor is that much more secure. And there I think that the Mahagathbandhan really could have done this much earlier.
So, and as you were just mentioning, the fact that because they announced this, it allowed them to put the spotlight kind of on the NDA and Nitish Kumar not being formally announced. But Home Minister Amit Shah's statement in this regard has caused a lot of speculation when he spoke to India Today television, and he said that Nitish Kumar, who is he to decide who will be the chief minister, and elected MLAs will take a decision after the elections take place. So there has been an effort from the NDA to after that say that we are fighting the elections under Nitish's leadership, again not saying that Nitish is the chief minister's face. So what is stopping the NDA from announcing it? Is it some kind of a plan, a backup plan in the offing where they want to keep their options open, and one of whom can be Chirag Paswan?
Yes, Sravasti, I think if you think from BJP's perspective, why would Amit Shah give a statement like that just ahead of the elections? I think it's a very deliberate attempt for BJP. So BJP and JDU's, the nature of the alliance is such that in socially it is kind of pulling together a very kind of unnatural alliance of upper caste dominated BJP and extremely backward castes and Dalits who kind of pull their weight behind, who support Nitish Kumar. So what has like while many of us kind of get a feeling that the EBCs and Mahadalits will largely stay with Nitish. But the thing is that the upper castes have been kind of very, wary about Nitish's leadership ever since this coalition or pre-poll alliance happened. In 2020, we know that a large section of BJP voter base who came from upper caste backgrounds, they did not vote for Nitish Kumar, and that was one of the reasons that JDU kind of shrunk to 43, its lowest ever tally. So and given there are a lot of speculations about how Nitish Kumar is functioning right now, whether his mental well-being is fine or not, or whether his physical well-being is fine or not, there is like BJP, I feel, is trying to do both things. One is kind of placate a section of their voters that, okay, Nitish in this kind of shape, mental and physical shape, may not be the chief minister, trying to keep things open, and while also at the same time trying to say that we will fight this election under Nitish's rule, so that the crucial component of EBC and Mahadalits do not get alienated from this alliance and switch to Mahagathbandhan. So I feel it's a strategic way to pitch it in a way. Of course, Congress is amplifying it because they have declared its chief ministerial candidate. But what I feel is what they should have highlighted more was the announcement of Mukesh Sahni as the deputy CM, because it was fairly clear that if Mahagathbandhan wins, Tejashwi is their natural CM candidate. But Mukesh Sahni is a step further in trying to consolidate or trying to kind of reach out to a segment which has traditionally not voted RJD or Congress, and they were largely in favor of the BJP or JDU. But this inclusion of Mukesh Sahni, giving him these many number of seats and also announcing him as the deputy chief minister, and Ashok Gehlot at the same time talking about possibilities of other deputy chief ministers who come from EBC caste, and last caste survey by Nitish Kumar showed that this whole segment is 36%, and it forms the biggest component of the electorate. So Mukesh Sahni's selection and possibility that there could be non-Yadav or a Muslim deputy chief minister is actually adding to the opposition's umbrella in terms of social representation, and they could have played it out more rather than of course Tejaswi led the Mahagathbandhan last time also, and he will lead it this time also. So but I think there needs to be, as Radhika said, there needs to be more cohesion between these ranks and a more coherent narrative which Mahagathbandhan had during the 2020 elections around unemployment, around a different set of issues. They need to have such a thing in the run up to the first phase also, so which I think is missing.
So, as you're saying that Mukesh Sahani's declaration as the deputy chief ministerial face is important because, of course, he represents the Malla community, and it's an attempt by the India bloc to reach out to the EBCs, which has traditionally been with Nitish. So, would you say that also the fact that this time the NDA across the 243 seats that they are contesting, about 15% are the tickets given to EBCs, which is not very much. So is it difficult for the NDA then to kind of sideline Nitish at this point, given that Mukesh Sahani has already been made visibly important in the Mahagathbandhan?
So, Sravasti, I think Nitish in that sense has, like I said, with his sort of work over 20 decades, he still commands certain loyalty among the EBC categories. But yes, it's been 20 years, he is older, and there is a sense that that 36% is up for grabs. I would only want to just temper it saying, I'm not sure how much of it is exactly up for grab. I wouldn't rule out Nitish as a very important factor. The Congress had a pioneering 10-point promise to the EBCs. I mean, it is really, if you think about it, it has the potential of being a game changer. But here's the perennial problem with the party: the lack of sangathan and the lack of actually trusting your EBC leaders. Remember that now we've seen a few years and a few elections of EBC politics. So even among the communities, there is a rising political awareness, which is not okay with just symbolic positions. And so I think the Congress has not been able to get this 10-point agenda to the people. If it manages to do that, I think it will have, it could pay them some dividends even now. The RJD, I think, again with the EBC, there has been an attempt to broaden the base. Definitely, if you look at the tickets given to the Koiris, or as we say, Kushwas more in UP. But again, Tejaswi has not managed a sort of Akhilesh type PDA campaign. And what the NDA has done is the BJP very clearly has shown what it really is, which is that it is an upper caste party. It has increased its tickets for the upper caste, literally doubled it. But there is a crafting here because it knows that it has Nitish that will pull in the EBC, and it has two other Dalit-led alliances. So you have Chirag Paswan, who really is a caste leader, a youth caste leader who has total loyalty from his Dusar Samaj. And in that sense, one will have to give the fact that he is seen at all the festivals, whether it is, the Chuharmal pujas or the Raja Salhesh pujas, which are so important to the Paswans. So I think somewhere the BJP has sort of made that calculation. And as for not naming Nitish, I think yes, there is an attempt to say that, look, we'll sort of not name him because that keeps our upper caste constituency happy. But at the same time, to think that, unless, things go dramatically differently, to think that Nitish is not going to be a chief minister candidate if the NDA wins is hard to imagine.
Because you spoke about Chirag Paswan, the role of Chirag Paswan has assumed a lot of importance. As Radhika was just mentioning, that he's emerged as a leader, and in fact, he has even taken on the center on policies that have been seen to be casteist, whether it was the lateral entry for SC/STs. He has spoken out despite being a union minister. Now he's contesting about 29 seats. He had contested independently in 2020, and his candidates caused reverses for Nitish's candidates in many of the seats. Now, there is a lot of speculation that Chirag Paswan's role here is going to be quite important in how the BJP uses him. Do you see any merit in that argument?
I thought Sravasti Chirag really came to his own during 2024 Lok Sabha elections, and I was looking at a few pre-election surveys done by these agencies, and across all the surveys, Chirag, to the question that who is the most preferred CM candidate, Tejashwi, Nitish, these are always in the top two. But in the third position has mostly been taken by Chirag Paswan, as just like he may not have the organization, he may not have that big an organization to claim the chief minister's position, but he has really grown in popularity. And given the fact, during the 2024 Lok Sabha election, when I was visiting Hajipur or his areas of dominance, his supporters were really thinking of him as a future chief minister, and I think he is kind of responding to those calls by going back to Bihar. He's union minister, and generally but now his sole aim is to kind of focus on Bihar centric politics, where he wants to emerge as a leader on his own right, and resultantly a strong bargaining force. And if you see his positioning or posturing before the assembly elections, he has made sure that he's made sure that he's seen that way, and he's been sometimes critical of Nitish Kumar, and he hasn't been that servile towards the BJP, or like he was during the 2024 election, where he called himself Hanuman for Modi. So, but he has been kind of talking about issues. He's talking about education, and he is projecting himself as the not only the leader of the biggest Dalit community in Bihar, but he's projecting himself as a pan-universal leader who can represent all communities. So, which is very interesting, because he- this is he could be a direct, after Nitish and Lalu's eras are gone, and BJP has no leadership right now after Sushil Modi, and that is why it has to entirely rely on Nitish Kumar. All BJP's experiments with kind of promoting different kinds of leaders like Samrat Chaudhary or Ringu Devi have all been kind of fallen flat. So there are two leaders which we can see. One is Tejashwi Yadav, who may or may not win the election, but he'll still be a leader. Chirag Paswan, on the other hand, he has also emerged like his father, and a leader in his own right. So let's see where Bihar politics takes him. But this time, given the fact that he is NDA and not contesting independently is a boost for the NDA.
And his 2024 strike rate is also 100% strike
100%
rate is
strike
also
rate,
being.
yeah.
I think a lot will depend on whether he is able to really become a much wider EBC leader,
EBC.
which he's trying. I think, in this respect, I think coming back to your point on Mukesh Sahni and the point you made that this should have been projected more, that you have a son of Malla as a deputy chief minister candidate. I mean, it's interesting. I interviewed Mukesh Sahni when he first entered politics in 2015, and at that time he told me how he'd made his money being on film sets like Bajrangi Bhaijaan and doing events for the Ambani. So he said he has the money and now wants to work for his community. And then we've seen him go back and forth across parties. He is politically ambitious. What's interesting is that just prior to the announcement of him as Deputy Chief Minister, there was a sense that Mukesh Sahni was down and out, that his association with the BJP had left him 3 MLAs down because of the 4 that had won, 3 had got inducted into the BJP. And so this is a complete shot in his arm. What it also enables him to do is go to his community and say that, look, I'm not just a token. I have the shot at real power. I mean, I can be Deputy Chief Minister. Now, the 2 things that I'd like to say here is that Tejashwi has been calling him a son of an Ati Pichra, but his label has really been son of Malla. One, will he be able to expand again his base? Is it just the Malla community that he is going to be able to galvanize? And in that, I think of his 15 seats, I think he's given 7 to those from the Nishad community, which is a sort of a good allocation. But how much of the Nishad community will actually be with him will also have to be seen, because I think, as Ajoy was mentioning earlier, that in Bihar the Nishad are even more than JDU with the BJP. And the difference is they're not unlike UP, where a lot of that proximity to the BJP also comes through ideas of religion, the iconography of Nishad Raj, Ram and the temple. In Bihar, that is not as prominent. So the Nishad community in Bihar don't associate themselves as prominently with Ram and with the sort of Ayodhya movement. Their association with the BJP is much more because of representation and for cash transfers. When they actually draw from the iconography of others like Ajoy Ashirwad, who's a freedom fighter, and I think Lalu even once got a university built in his name. So that sort of slight move away, the sort of non-ideological attachment can work in the favor of Mukesh Sahni. What I think Mukesh Sahni will have to really struggle with is, 1, of course, being able to take his community. 2, can he really be seen as a broader EBC leader? One of the things that I hear from other EBC communities is that Mukesh Sahni's primary thrust is to sort of get SC status accorded to his community. And so in terms of issues, that takes him a little away from wider EBC issues. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
And an interesting part of the alliance is also Upendra Kushwaha, who was one of the NDA allies who openly came out and said that nothing is well in the NDA. And then, of course, he met the Home Minister and he now says that things are fine. But how important is Upendra Kushwaha to this alliance and the Kushwaha vote in general?
I mean, I think Kushwaha vote, or the Koiri vote as it's more often spoken of in Bihar, is quite critical. I think if you look at some of the numbers that the Mahagathbandhan got last time, a large section of it came from a belt which has a large Kushwaha vote. If you look at the CPIML, for example, some of their victories also came, a large measure to the Kushwaha vote. So I think in the last 5 years, the NDA and the JDU, and in fact has realized that some of this vote slipped away and have made a concerted bid to get that vote back to the BJP. How interestingly, while I'd said that the RJD and Tejashwi hadn't broadened his base as much as, let's say, Akhilesh, I think where he has broadened is the numbers of tickets that he has given to Koiri candidates. And so I think that there is a realization in all political parties that this is a community that's important, and so Upendra Kushwaha will have to also be tracked very closely.
Right, so we'll have to keep our eyes on all these developments that are going on in Bihar and will continue to develop in the coming weeks as the elections get underway. But let's also speak about scholar Francesca Orsini. She's a scholar of Hindi and professor emerita at SOAS London University, and she was stopped from entering India earlier this week, even though she had a valid 5-year visa. Now, Orsini is an author of high regard, and her 2002 book, The Hindi Public Sphere, 1920 to 1940, Language and Literature in the Age of Nationalism, is very widely regarded. She was planning to visit friends, but interestingly, the reason that was given to her is that she was deported because her purpose of travel did not match her visa category. When it was pointed out to officials that she was visiting on a tourist visa to meet friends, the official maintained that a prior pattern of visa violations had been observed and that she had reportedly engaged in research activities while on a tourist visa earlier. How do you see this reasoning and the fact that Orsini, who is very widely regarded for her work in Hindi over here, was stopped from entering the country?
So we remember how Natasha Kaul was also deported last year or last to last year, if I remember correctly.
2024.
Yeah, 2024. So this is clearly a generally the government suspicion of academics, independent academics who are researching in India, and there seems to be an assumption that anyone who is researching in India and is especially who are in different universities of repute abroad, they are likely to be critical of them, which is not the case with Francesca Orsini, because she's written a very good book. She's not, one of the traditional, you say, oh, what do you say, left-wingers or general critics of the government. She is a pure academic and she focuses on her research. And yet she was not given a proper reason why she was deported. And I was kind of very appalled by the fact that most of the newspapers who quoted the government is saying that she lacked R category visa and she violated visa regulations. I thought those were all kind of post facto responses, because that official who spoke with different newspapers, was he an MEA spokesperson? Was he a defense ministry spokesperson? We don't know. Or we don't know that, and also we don't know whether and one of them said that her visa was actually cancelled in March 2025, and of course, so there was absolutely no information about this to Orsini, who wouldn't have kind of risk coming to India if she did not have a visa. She was all this while thinking that she had a valid visa, but if the visa is being cancelled, there has to be some kind of procedure to inform the person that you can't come anymore and you have to reapply or something, but nothing was told of that sort. So that is what is quite alarming, and to kind of see it that Francesca Orsini is one of the world's renowned scholars of Hindi public sphere. The government keeps talking about encouraging Hindi and talking in Hindi, communicating in Hindi, and there's one scholar here who's actually dealing with Hindi as a language, as a medium of communication in all its seriousness. She has not been allowed to. So I'm not surprised.
As you were mentioning that she's perhaps the fourth foreign scholar, just to inform our viewers, with a valid visa to be denied entry in recent years. This includes Britain-based anthropologist Filippo Sella, who was stopped at the Thiruvananthapuram airport, as well as Natasha Kaul, as Ajoy was mentioning, as well as British architecture professor Lindsay Bremer, who was also stopped. Now, the question that is being raised, as Ajoy was also just pointing out, is that is this a new intellectual border policy in which certain kinds of academics are being stopped in an ad hoc manner, and academic freedom is shrinking?
I wouldn't even say it's ad hoc or random in any way. I think it's very clear that, look, this isn't about paperwork. This isn't about visas. This is about control. And I think, and you know, in the case of a Francesca Orsini, as Ajoy was saying, you actually have a really gentle scholar. She has never courted any controversy. She is someone who is really an academic, has confined herself to her texts, has done meticulous research. But what is she looking at? Language. And language is where thought, where culture resides. And it is something, this really is an issue that the RSS will feel very deeply about. And I don't think there's a coincidence that all those who are often stopped are, of course, if you're very critically open about the government, you know what the reason is. But if you look at the work that some of the other scholars are doing, it challenges the RSS's view of language, of history, of archaeology, of society, of the nation. And Francesca Orsini, I mean, if you look at her work, she has looked at some very interesting things. You know, what happens to North Indian languages after Temur and before the Mughals? She looks at Hindi as used in women's journals and magazines, and how, and contrasting that with the more national order of Hindi. And of course, I'm sort of simplifying her work grossly here, but and she explores these topics very creatively. She has a lovely book on love in South Asia. I actually used it because she draws out the different sort of categories, modes of love historically. Now, the RSS has a clear view on Hindi. Their Hindi is a monochromatic Hindi. It is a Hindi that is in opposition to Urdu. Whatever work that Orsini has done, and done very organically and very meticulously, throws up the fact that languages evolve through hybridity. They evolve through interbreeding. They evolve through interactions with other cultures. There's a constant cross-pollination, and that's the beauty of language. Unfortunately, that Hindi is not the Hindi that the RSS would like to see as the national language in this country. And so, to me, it's not really that much of a coincidence. Obviously, we don't have the information, so we cannot make a direct correlation, but it isn't something that, if we see the trend as is going, and we see what is beginning to bother, and it also shows us the extent, and look, there's a consistency to the RSS. They are very clear in what their belief is, and they work towards it, and they're in power. In India, you can control thought through controlling syllabus, through universities. How do you monitor foreign scholars? Visas, OCI cards, and that becomes a way. And so I don't think this is a coincidence. It's a very, very sad thing that someone, you know, I just wanted to say, if there was a second, I was discussing this with Alok Rai, who is, as we know, one of the most preeminent scholars of Hindi, also Premchand's grandson. And in one of the things he sort of said to me, and I was trying to remember his words, and he says, perhaps the phrase you were trying to recall was what I had used for the RSS narrative of the Indian past, which is monochromatic and trauma-inflected. Francesca's account of the multilingual, promiscuously hybridizing literary cultures of North Indian literary cultures renders the RSS narrative unsustainable. So I don't think we're really talking about official paperwork and violations.
All right, so that's all that we have time for in this edition of the Wire Wrap. Thank you so much, Radhika and Ajoy, for joining us, and to the viewers for watching.